The massive space station called Nexus Prime hung in the darkness between the stars like a giant metal city. Ships from 12 different alien worlds docked at its many ports. Inside the station's main hall, delegates from across the galaxy gathered. For the most important meeting in 50 years, Captain Jake Morrison walked through the crowded corridors with his small team. Lieutenant Amy Collins stayed close to his left side, her hand always near her weapon. Dr. Ben Parker carried a thick folder of documents and looked nervous about the whole situation. The three humans moved carefully among the alien beings that filled the station. Jake had never seen so many different species in one place. The Vorthok looked like walking crystals that sparkled under the bright lights. Their bodies were clear and sharp, and they moved with careful steps that made soft, ringing sounds. The Zephyrians reminded Jake of giant insects with 4 arms and wings that buzzed when they talked. The Synthoids appeared to be made of metal and circuits, with glowing blue eyes that never blinked. Other aliens filled the halls too. Some had thick fur and walked on 4 legs. Others had tentacles instead of arms and floated above the ground. A few looked almost human, but had skin colors that ranged from deep purple to bright green. Jake tried not to stare, but it was hard not to be amazed by the variety of life in the galaxy. The humans had only been part of this galactic coalition for 15 years. Before that, Earth had been alone in space, not knowing that thousands of other worlds existed with thinking beings on them. Now humanity was the newest member of a group that had been together for hundreds of years. Amy leaned close to Jake and whispered, "They're all looking at us like we don't belong here." She was right. Jake could feel the stares and hear the quiet conversations that stopped when humans walked by. Most of the aliens seemed to think humans were still too primitive to be part of serious galactic politics. Some had even voted against letting Earth join the coalition in the first place. Dr. Parker adjusted his glasses and said quietly, "Remember, we're here to prevent a war. The Outer Rim territories are causing major problems. If we can't reach an agreement, millions could die in the fighting." Jake nodded. He understood the importance of this meeting. 3 different alien empires claimed the same star systems in the Outer Rim. Each side had built up their military forces and made threats. The coalition hoped this summit could find a peaceful solution before shooting started. They entered the Great Assembly Hall, a huge circular room with a dome ceiling that showed the stars outside. Seats were arranged in rings around a central speaking area. Each delegation had their own section with special equipment to help them breathe and communicate. The opening ceremony began with each species showing off their greatest achievements. The Vorthok went first. Their ambassador, a tall crystal being named Christic Vex, stepped forward and activated a device that projected images in the air. "Behold the power of pure energy manipulation," Christic Vex announced. The images showed massive ships firing beams of white-hot plasma that could melt through the strongest metals in seconds. "Our weapons can destroy entire fleets with single shots. No armor can withstand the focused fury of a star." The audience made impressed sounds. Even Jake had to admit the display was amazing. The plasma weapons were far beyond anything humans had developed. Next came the Zephyrians. Their military leader, General Buzz 7, spread all 4 arms wide and made excited clicking noises with his mouth parts. "Our bioweapons adapt to any defense," General Buzz 7 said through his translator. "Device. Living ammunition that learns and evolves with each battle. Viruses that can reprogram enemy computer systems. Creatures that eat metal and grow stronger as they consume enemy ships." More amazed whispers filled the hall. Jake watched the demonstrations with growing concern. Human technology seemed very basic compared to these incredible weapons. The Synthoids came next. Their speaker was a tall robot with a voice like music made from metal. Quantum disruptors that ignore the laws of physics. Weapons that exist in multiple dimensions at once. Projectiles that strike before they are fired. The demonstrations continued for hours. Each alien species tried to impress the others with weapons that seemed like magic to human eyes. Gravity guns that crushed ships into tiny balls. Sound weapons that could shatter planets. Energy shields that reflected any attack back at the shooter. Finally, it was humanity's turn. Jake felt every eye in the room focus on him as he stood up. Amy and Ben flanked him as they walked to the center of the hall. The silence was complete. Earth's delegation will now present their military capabilities, announced the ceremony leader. A floating jellyfish-like creature with a bored tone, Jake reached into his jacket and pulled out a simple leather holster. From it, he drew an old-fashioned pistol with a wooden grip and metal barrel. The weapon looked ancient compared to everything else they had seen. The reaction was immediate. Laughter erupted from every section of the hall. The crystal beings made sounds like wind chimes in a hurricane. The insect aliens clicked and buzzed with amusement. The robots produced electronic sounds that could only be mechanical laughter. Christic Vex spoke loudly enough for everyone to hear. Is this some kind of joke? Do humans still use chemical explosions to throw metal pieces? His own insult. How primitive. You also fight with sticks and stones? The robot speaker's voice carried across the hall. Perhaps humans should return to their little planet and practice with toys until they develop real weapons. Jake stood quietly in the center of the mocking crowd, holding his grandfather's old pistol. The weapon had been carried through World War II on Earth, passed down through 3 generations of his family. To these advanced aliens, it looked like something from a museum. General Thrakis, the leader of the Drakmori Empire delegation, stood up from his seat. He was a large reptilian creature with scales like black armor and eyes that glowed red. His voice boomed across the hall. This is exactly why humans should not be part of serious negotiations. They bring ancient relics to a gathering of galactic powers. How can we trust beings who still play with primitive toys to help solve complex political problems? Other delegates began to nod and make agreeing sounds. Some started talking about whether humans should even be allowed to stay for the rest of the summit. Jake slowly put the pistol back in its holster. He looked around the hall at all the aliens who thought humanity was too backward to matter. Amy's face was red with anger, and Ben looked like he wanted to hide under his chair. The ceremony leader floated forward. Perhaps the human delegation would prefer to observe rather than participate in the actual negotiations. Jake finally spoke, his voice calm and steady. We came here to prevent a war. We'll do whatever it takes to make that happen. But even as he said the words, Jake could see that most of the aliens had already decided humans were not worth listening to. The summit was off to a very bad start. 3 days passed since the opening ceremony where the aliens had laughed at Jake's old pistol. The peace talks continued, but progress was slow. Every time the humans tried to suggest solutions, the other delegates ignored them or talked over them like they were not even there. Jake sat in his small quarters aboard Nexus Prime, cleaning his grandfather's weapon. Amy paced back and forth across the room, still angry about how they had been treated. I can't believe how rude they are, Amy said. It's acting like we're children who wandered into an adult conversation. Ben looked up from his computer screen where he was studying the territorial disputes. Maybe we should just focus on learning from this experience. We're new to galactic politics. New doesn't mean stupid, Amy replied. Some of their ideas for solving the Outer Rim problem are terrible. They're going to start a war instead of preventing one. Jake finished cleaning the pistol and put it back in its holster. We knew this would be difficult. Earth sent us here because they believe we can help, even if nobody else does. A sudden alarm started blaring throughout the station. Red lights flashed in the corridors outside their room. Jake jumped to his feet and grabbed his weapon. All delegates report to secure areas immediately, a voice announced over the speakers. Nexus Prime is under attack. The 3 humans ran from their quarters into chaos. Aliens were running in all directions, some screaming in languages the translation devices couldn't handle fast enough. Emergency lights made everything look red and dangerous. Jake grabbed a security guard who was rushing past. What's happening? Ships came out of nowhere, the guard said, breathing hard. They destroyed our outer defenses in minutes. The shields are failing. Through the large windows that lined the corridors, Jake could see enemy ships surrounding the station. Were black and sleek, with sharp edges that made them look like flying knives. Explosions lit up the darkness as the station's weapons tried to fight back. Amy pointed at one of the attacking ships. Look at those markings. That's the Void Syndicate. Jake's blood went cold. Everyone in the galaxy knew about the Void Syndicate. They were terrorists and criminals from many different species who wanted to keep the galaxy at war so they could profit from selling weapons and slaves. If they destroyed this peace summit, the Outer Rim conflicts would explode into a massive war. They must have been planning this for months, Ben said as they hurried toward the central conference hall where all delegates were supposed to gather for safety. They knew exactly when and where to strike. The station shook as another explosion hit somewhere nearby. The lights flickered and went out for a few seconds before emergency power kicked in. Jake could hear weapons fire getting closer. They reached the conference hall to find it packed with frightened aliens. The crystal beings were making high-pitched sounds of distress. The insect aliens had gathered in tight groups with their wings folded protectively around their smaller members. Even the robot synthoids seemed worried. Their usually calm electronic voices now, rapid and urgent. General Thrakis stood near the center of the room, shouting orders to anyone who would listen. "We need to contact our fleets immediately. My warships can be here in 6 hours." Christek Vex's crystalline form was flickering with nervous energy. "The Syndicate has jamming equipment. No communications are getting through beyond the station." A security officer burst through the main doors. His uniform was torn and he had a deep cut on his forehead. "The boarding parties have reached level 7. Our weapons aren't working against their armor." Jake felt confused. "What do you mean not working?" The officer looked desperate. "Our shields adapt to whatever we shoot at them. Plasma weapons just get absorbed. Energy beams bounce off. Even physical projectiles are being stopped somehow." Double quotes. Dr. Parker turned pale. "Adaptive shielding technology. I've read about it in theoretical papers, but I didn't think anyone had actually built it." Amy checked her own weapon, a standard Coalition-issue energy pistol. "So our guns are useless?" More security officers ran into the hall, all carrying the same bad news. The Syndicate forces were moving through the station easily, their advanced armor making them nearly invincible against normal weapons. One of the Zephyrian delegates started making panicked clicking sounds. They specifically designed their defenses to stop Coalition military technology. "They've been studying our weapons for years." General Thrakis slammed his clawed fist against a wall. "Impossible. Our quantum disruptors can pierce any known defense." "It's not anymore," said another security officer who had just arrived. "I saw a whole squad empty their quantum weapons into one Syndicate soldier. He didn't even slow down." The hall filled with desperate voices as the aliens argued about what to do. Some wanted to try reaching their ships in the docking bays. Others thought they should barricade themselves in the conference hall and wait for rescue that might never come. Jake listened to the chaos and felt a strange calmness settle over him. He had been in dangerous situations before during his military service on Earth. Panic never helped anyone survive. "How many attackers are there?" he asked the security officers. "Maybe 200 that we've seen," one replied. "But they're moving. Like they know exactly where they're going. This isn't random. They have detailed plans at the station." Ben was working on his portable computer, trying to access the station's security systems. "The main computer shows they've taken control of almost half the station already. They're heading straight for this hall." Christek Vex turned toward the humans with something that might have been desperation in his crystal features. "Dear. People have any military vessels nearby?" Jake shook his head. "The nearest Earth ships are weeks away. Came here on a diplomatic transport." General Thrakis made a sound of disgust. Of course, the primitive humans brought no real protection. Amy's face went red with anger again, but before she could say anything, the lights went out completely. Emergency power kicked in a few seconds later, but the red lighting made everything look like a horror movie. A new voice came over the speakers, cold and electronic. "Attention, delegates of the so-called Galactic Coalition. You have 10 minutes to surrender peacefully. Resistance is futile. Your advanced weapons cannot harm us. Prepare for boarding." The alien delegates looked at each other with growing fear. All their incredible technology, all their powerful weapons, and none of it could stop the attackers. Jake touched the holster containing his grandfather's old pistol. The weapon that had been mocked 3 days ago as primitive and useless. Wondered if the aliens were right. Maybe chemical explosions and metal bullets really were too ancient to matter in this advanced age. but as the sound of marching feet echoed through the corridors outside the conference hall, Jake realized they were about to find out just how wrong the galaxy could be about human technology. The 10 minutes were almost up. The heavy doors to the conference hall exploded inward with a blast that shook the entire room.
Ow.
Smoke poured through the opening as armored figures stepped through the wreckage. The Syndicate soldiers moved like machines, their black armor reflecting the red emergency lights. Jake counted 12 attackers entering the hall. Each one carried weapons he had never seen before, with glowing parts that hummed with deadly energy. Their helmets covered their faces completely, making them look like walking nightmares. The alien delegates pressed themselves against the far walls of the room. Some of the smaller species tried to hide behind the larger ones. The proud warriors, who had boasted about their powerful weapons just days before, now cowered like frightened children. The leader of the attackers stepped forward. He was taller than the others and had additional armor plating across his chest and shoulders. He spoke. His voice came through speakers in his helmet, making it sound cold and electronic. "I am Commander Vex9 of the Void Syndicate. You have failed to surrender within the time limit. Now you will all die, and the galaxy will continue its profitable wars." General Thrakus tried to stand tall and look brave, but Jake could see his clawed hand shaking. "You cannot simply murder diplomatic delegates. The Coalition will hunt you to the ends of space." Commander Vex9 laughed, a harsh sound that echoed through his speakers. "The Coalition will be too busy fighting each other to worry about hunting anyone. Without this peace treaty, the Outer Rim wars will spread everywhere. Weapon sales will increase by 300%.
Yes.
Christek Vex's crystalline body was flickering rapidly with fear. "Our fleets will come for us. Our fleets cannot find you," the commander replied. "We have jamming technology that makes this station invisible to long-range sensors. By the time anyone realizes what happened here, we will be long gone." One of the Zephyrian delegates tried to run for a side exit, but a Syndicate soldier shot him with some kind of energy weapon. The alien fell to the ground, unconscious but still breathing. "Anyone else who tries to leave will not be so fortunate," Commander Vex9 announced. Jake stood quietly among the panicking aliens, his hand resting on his holster. Amy and Ben were beside him, both looking scared but ready to fight. Neek knew their Coalition energy weapons would be useless against the adaptive armor. But he had to try something. Amy whispered, "What do we do? We can't just let them kill everyone." Ben was still holding his computer, his fingers typing rapidly. "I'm trying to access the station's emergency systems, but they've locked out most of the controls." Jake made his decision. He stepped forward, away from the wall where the other delegates were huddled. The movement caught Commander Vex9's attention. "Ah, the primitive humans," the commander said with amusement in his electronic voice. "I was wondering when you would try something foolish." The other Syndicate soldiers turned their weapons toward Jake, but their leader held up a hand to stop them. "Let me guess," Commander Vex9 continued. "You think your ancient chemical weapons can somehow save the day? We studied every Coalition military technology for years before building our armor. Your little energy pistols cannot even scratch our shields." Jake drew his grandfather's old pistols slowly, keeping his movements calm and steady. The weapon looked even more primitive, surrounded by all the advanced alien technology. General Thrakus made a sound of disgust. "Even now the human brings out his useless antique. That old gun cannot possibly harm modern armor." Some of the alien delegates were shaking their heads, clearly thinking Jake was about to get himself killed for nothing. Others looked away, not wanting to watch what they thought would be a quick execution. Commander Vex9 gestured for his soldiers to lower their weapons slightly. "This should be entertaining. Please, human, show us how your museum piece works." Against military-grade defensive systems, Jake aimed the pistol at the commander's chest. The weapon felt familiar and comfortable in his hands, just like it had felt to his grandfather decades ago, during Earth's Great War. "You made one mistake," Jake said quietly. "Really? And what mistake was that? You studied Coalition weapons, but you never studied human weapons." Jake pulled the trigger. The gunshot was surprisingly loud in the enclosed space, much louder than the quiet humming of energy weapons. The bullet left the barrel at incredible speed, but something strange happened as it traveled through the air. The projectile seemed to shimmer and change, like it was made of liquid metal that was reshaping itself. Instead of bouncing off Commander Vexanine's adaptive shields like other weapons had done, the bullet passed through the energy barrier as if it was not there at all. The bullet struck the commander in the center of his chest armor. The impact made a sharp metallic sound that rang through the hall. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then Commander Vexanine staggered backward. Sparks began shooting out of his armor joints. The glowing parts of his equipment started flickering randomly. His helmet speakers crackled with static. "Impossible," he said, his electronic voice distorting. "Our shields adapt to any weapon signature." Jake kept his pistol aimed at the commander while he spoke. "Your shields adapt to energy patterns and known projectile types. But these bullets are programmable matter. They change their molecular structure while flying through the air." Dr. Parker stepped up beside Jake, his fear replaced by excitement. Each projectile contains millions of microscopic processors. They analyze whatever defense they encounter and reshape themselves to penetrate it. Amy moved to Jake's other side, still amazed by what she had just seen. The bullets can become denser than neutron star material or lighter than gas, depending on what they need to do. Can even change their chemical composition. Commander Vexanine looked down at his chest, where small cracks were spreading across. His armor plating. But the power requirements for such technology... Each bullet has its own fusion power source, Ben explained. Smaller than an atom, but containing enough energy to reshape matter at the quantum level. The other Syndicate soldiers were raising their weapons again, but their leader was collapsing to his knees. His armor was failing completely now, with pieces falling off and electronic systems shutting down. "You see," Jake said, moving closer to the dying commander. "While other species focused on making their weapons more complex, humans focused on making simple weapons incredibly smart." Commander Vexanine fell forward onto the floor. His armor was now just ordinary metal and plastic. All the advanced technology inside it completely destroyed by the bullet's quantum level. Interference. The remaining Syndicate soldiers looked at each other uncertainly. Their leader was dead, killed by what they had thought was a primitive weapon. Their confidence was shaken. Jake aimed his pistol at the nearest soldier. "Anyone else want to test how primitive human technology really is?" The alien delegates who had been cowering against the walls now stared at Jake with new respect and fear. The weapon they had mocked was turning out to be far more dangerous than any of their advanced guns. The real fight was just beginning. The remaining Syndicate soldiers stood frozen in the conference hall, staring at their dead commander. Their weapons were still raised, but Jake could see uncertainty in their body language. They had never seen their advanced armor fail so completely. Jake kept his pistol aimed at the nearest soldier while speaking calmly. "You have two choices. Drop your weapons and surrender, or find out if your armor works any better than his did." One of the soldiers took a step backward. "Our shields are the same design. If that weapon killed Vexanine, it can kill all of us." Another soldier was looking at readings on his arm display. "My armor sensors cannot identify the threat type. The defensive systems do not know how to adapt." Amy had drawn her own sidearm. A weapon that looked similar to Jake's, but was clearly newer. Ben pulled out a small pistol from inside his jacket. All three humans now had their weapons ready. General Thrakis was the first alien to speak. His voice was much quieter and more respectful than before. "Captain Morrison, perhaps we underestimated human military capabilities." Jake did not take his eyes off the Syndicate soldiers. "Perhaps you did," the lead Syndicate soldier made a decision. He threw his weapon on the ground and raised his hands. "We surrender. Our mission has failed." The other soldiers followed his example, dropping their advanced guns and raising their arms. Without their leader and facing weapons they could not defend against, they had no will to continue fighting. Station security officers rushed into the hall to arrest the surrendered terrorists. As they led the Syndicate soldiers away, Jake finally lowered his pistol and put it back in its holster. The alien delegates slowly came forward from where they had been hiding against the walls. All of them looked at Jake with expressions he had never seen before. The mockery and dismissal were completely gone, replaced by respect and something that might have been fear. Christek Vex approached first, his crystalline form no longer flickering with nervousness. "Captain Morrison, I owe you an apology." "All do. Your weapon saved our lives today." General Thrakis nodded his large reptilian head. "I was wrong to call your technology primitive. That was the most advanced weapon I have ever witnessed." Dr. Parker smiled and adjusted his glasses. "Actually, the gun itself really is primitive. It belonged to Jake's grandfather during an ancient Earth war. But the ammunition represents decades of human research." One of the Zephyrian delegates clicked his mandibles thoughtfully. "You combined old design with new technology? Most species abandon their past when they advance." Ben opened his computer and showed the screen to the gathered. "Aliens. Humans never stopped using projectile weapons. While other species moved to energy-based systems, we kept improving ballistics, made bullets smarter instead of making guns more complex." Amy pointed to Jake's holster. "Every round in that weapon can analyze its target in microseconds and reshape itself for maximum effectiveness. The bullets can become harder than diamond or softer than liquid, depending on what they encounter." A Syntoid delegate asked in his musical electronic voice, "What is the power source for such advanced ammunition?" "Contained fusion," Dr. Parker explained. "Each bullet carries enough energy to power a small city, but only for the few seconds it needs to adapt and strike." General Thrakis looked troubled. "If human weapons are this advanced, why did you not tell us before? Why let us think you were technologically inferior?" Jake considered the question carefully before answering. "Because we hoped we would never need to use them. Humans prefer peaceful solutions to problems." Christek Vex made a sound like wind chimes. "But surely you have other advanced weapons. Military ships with similar technology?" Amy and Ben looked at Jake, waiting to see how much he would reveal. Jake made a decision that would change how the galaxy saw humanity forever. "What you saw today was actually our least impressive military technology," Jake said quietly. "Programmable bullets are standard equipment for human security forces. Our real weapons remain classified." The alien delegates exchanged worried glances. If this incredible weapon was considered basic by human standards, what did their advanced military technology look like? One of the smaller alien species, a furry creature with large eyes, spoke up nervously. "Many humans know about these weapons," Ben answered with a slight smile. "Every human soldier carries them. We have been using programmable ammunition for over 20 years. The implications hit the alien delegates like a physical blow. Humanity was not the primitive, technologically, backward species they had assumed. Humans had been sitting quietly in coalition meetings, while possessing weapons that could defeat any known defense. General Thrakis asked the question that was on everyone's mind. Why did humans choose diplomacy over conquest? With such weapons, you could have dominated the galaxy. Jake looked around at all the alien faces watching him, because that is not who we are. Humans learned long ago that the strongest weapons are useless if you do not know when and how to use them properly. Amy nodded. My grandfather fought in the same war as Jake's grandfather. He always said that the best victory is the one you never have to fight for. The next few hours passed quickly as station security rounded up the remaining Syndicate forces throughout Nexus Prime. Jake's team helped coordinate the effort, and their weapons proved effective against every type of terrorist armor they encountered. When communications were restored, the alien delegates contacted their home worlds with news of the attack and its resolution. Jake listened to several of these conversations and noticed how the tone had changed completely. No one was dismissing human capabilities anymore. 3 days later, the peace negotiations resumed. The atmosphere in the conference hall was entirely different. When Jake offered suggestions for solving the Outer Rim territorial disputes, the other delegates listened carefully and asked thoughtful questions. General, Thrakis approached Jake during a break in the talks. I have been thinking about what you said, about knowing when to use powerful weapons. Jake nodded. What about it? Humans could have used your advanced technology to force a solution to these territorial problems. You could have threatened us into agreement. Yes, we could have. Jake agreed. But then the peace would not last. Fear-based agreements always fail eventually. The Drakmori general considered this. So you chose to earn respect rather than demand it. Respect that is earned lasts longer than respect that is forced. Jake replied by the end of the week the Nexus Prime Accords were signed by all 12 species. The Outer Rim territories would be jointly administered by the Coalition, disputes settled by peaceful arbitration rather than warfare. As Jake prepared to leave the station, found himself looking out at the alien fleet formations visible through the large windows. Ships from across the galaxy floated peacefully side by side, their weapons powered down. Amy joined him at the window. Grandfather's old gun helped prevent a galactic war. I think he would be proud. Jake touched the holster that held his family. Weapon. The best weapons are not always the newest ones. Sometimes the most important thing is understanding why you carry them. Ben approached with their departure clearance. Ready to go home? The day. Jake took one last look at the alien fleets. Humanity had earned its place at the galactic table not through threats or shows of force, but by demonstrating wisdom about when to fight and when to talk. Yes, Jake said. Let's go home. The old gun had done its job. Peace was worth more than any weapon.